Page 52, Oasis. Now on pages 50 and 51, they're talking about the triads and the inversions of the chords, the primary chords for the key of A minor. We did them for C major, or I talked about briefly. I didn't really do a video on them. I just don't see that you need my help on those because they're straightforward. You're just, on page 50, you're just playing the triads and their inversions for A minor, right? I will point out, in case you're confused, on page 50, the very last note in the right hand, that happens to be a high A. Hopefully you know how to figure it out, because you know 2 ledger lines is a C, I hope. So 3 ledger lines would be an E, 4 ledger lines would be a G, and so the space right above the 4th ledger line would be an A, and that's what it is. On page 51, you're doing the triads again and their inversions, except now you're doing them arpeggiated, or as broken chords, so it's there. And at the end of page 51, in the left hand, those notes, again, hopefully you know how to figure them out. 2 ledger lines below the bass clef is a C, 3 is an A, that's what it is, an A. Right. So that's really all I have to say about pages 50 and 51. Let's go ahead and talk about Oasis and learn about the pedal. They have a crude picture of the pedals on the piano. If you look down, everybody I think pretty much knows what the pedals on a piano look like. I don't really see that I need to go into that. Sometimes you have 2 pedals. Sometimes you have 3. There are, I understand, pedals with, or pianos with 4 pedals. I've never seen one, but I guess there are. And believe it or not, you might have a piano with 1. For instance, portable electronic pianos. So if you have a plug-in pedal, you have 1 pedal. Okay, and that's the pedal we're talking about, the sustaining pedal, or the pedal on the right. It's called several names: damper pedal, sustaining pedal, loud pedal. I call it, and it's sometimes a special effects pedal. I am really picky about the pedal. I'm going to probably change the pedal or explain things on it. On this piece, a few little things I'd like to point out, and I have some fingering suggestions for you. The beginning of this is a simple A minor scale, going down or descending. And then you got the scale going up. However, I want to talk about the chords at the bottom of page 52. Now these chords also happen on page 53. You'll see it when you get there. They're suggesting a 1-3 to start with the A, D. Then they want a 1-3-5, and then a 1-3-5, and then a 1-3-5. It's okay. Doesn't hurt to do it that way. Gives you practice at moving your right hand around. You have to look down at what you're doing. That's when you're first beginning. Sometimes it's easier just to use the same fingers for them and keep moving the fingers around. And basically that's what they're doing. However, if you're getting this pretty well, or maybe this is the second time you've been through the book or whatever, and yes, I do recommend you go through the book more than once, I would suggest you think about a different fingering, which allows us not to move our hands around so much. So in piano playing, we try not to move the hands any more than we have to, but when you're a beginner, sometimes you have to move them around more to simplify the fingering. Well, I'm going to complicate the fingering a little. So instead, here at the beginning, it's the last line on page 52, the first measure. Instead of a 1-3, I recommend a 1-2. Then on the third beat, where you have the A, D, F, I recommend a 4 on the F. Right? We haven't moved our hand position at all. We're still here. Okay? Then on the last chord in that measure, I recommend a 2, 4, 5. We haven't moved our hand. This is a chord. This is a standard fingering for this D minor chord, and that's what this is. It's quite normal. You'll run across it a lot in piano. It doesn't hurt to learn to finger it this way. So here we don't have to move the hand at all. So I'm here in the measure. And then for the next measure it's 1, 2, 3. You know, and that simplifies moving the hands around. You have to use different fingers, but it's good for you. I suggest you try it out. Again, on the last measure, 1, 2. Now when you get to the top of 53, go ahead and use with your suggestion. What we want to do, if we can, is connect the top note of these chords. And using a fourth on that G sharp at the top of page 53 lets us do that. You get the same thing over on page 53, third line down, and the fourth line. Now on the fourth line we do have to move. So the fourth line, same fingering I'm suggesting, is 1, 2, then a 4 on the F, and then a 2, 4, 5. Now for the next measure, they're saying 1, 3, 5. I'm suggesting 1, 2, 4. Because that means you can play the last measure in that line without moving your hand. It's just 2, 4, 5. Right? And then you have to move it for the last chord in the last line. And of course you're going to hold that down for the whole line. It's all tied. All three of those notes are tied to the end. The left hand really just has a regular rhythmic pattern to it. And as long as you just keep that going, it's like a drum set. It's pretty simple on the notes. You're either doing the AE or an AF. But, you know, I see some octaves. Big deal, that's it, right? But you can handle that. At the very end, on page 53, last measure, left hand. So you've been here. That last measure, you have to figure out the notes. They are an A and an E down here. Yeah. Dynamic wise, you can do the dynamics, and they apply to the melody. The right hand, unless the right hand is resting, in which case they apply to the left hand. But you can figure that. And the diminuendo and crescendo, yeah, shouldn't be. Hopefully you can handle all that. Now let's talk about this pedaling thing. There are different notations for pedaling. Different publishers use different things. What this book is using is the most common type. Look at the bottom of page 52, last line. There's a line underneath the bass clef, and at the beginning of each measure it has that little pulse thing, a little up arrow type thing, but it's all connected, okay? Well, this means when the line goes down, like at the beginning of the third line there, that's when you push the pedal down. You keep the pedal down as long as the line's going, and then when it has that pulse, that means you lift the pedal up and put it right back down. My problem with what they're doing, all books, they all do the same, it's not just this one, is they're not really accurate on when the pedal goes down and when the pedal comes up and when you change it. And there's different styles for doing this, okay? I'm going to teach you what I teach, the most common style I use and what I learned and what I taught. And then we'll alter it as we go through when the time comes. And that is called delayed pedaling or an overlapping pedaling. It's delayed in the sense that you push the notes down first and then the pedal. You can push the pedal down with the notes. It's a style, but I don't use it very often. There's sometimes I do use it, and I'll explain that when I get there. So at the bottom of page 52, I would suggest you push the notes down first and immediately after push the pedal down. Okay, you're going to leave them down for the whole measure. And then on the second measure, I'm going to push the notes down first, and then I'm going to lift the pedal up and put it back down. So there's a little overlap. And the sound, as long as it's little, the ear doesn't mind. If you try and push the pedal down with the notes, here, and you try and do the up down, when you press it down, you take the chance of missing it and lifting the pedal up too soon, and you'll get a little silence, you'll get a little break. So this overlapping pedal is much safer. It ensures there's always sound, all right? So that's what I am recommending you do. Now at the top of page 53, when it comes up, they're saying lift it up right after you push the notes down in the second measure. So if I play the first measure, it's here. And that's okay in this case, that works. In a lot of cases, you'd want a little silence before you go on, so you'd have to lift the pedal up a little early. But in this case, you don't need the silence. It's fine. You can lift it up right after you play the notes in the second measure. Then on page 53, it's the same thing until the very end. And at the very end, you're here, and the pedal is down. And after 3 beats in that last measure, because beat 4 is a rest, on beat 4, the pedal and the hands all come up at the same time. They're telling you to do something in here I have a little problem with, but we'll go along with it because it's part of the exercise. And that is, at the bottom of page 53, there's a note. Press soft pedal. So you see that there? The dynamic in the last measure is a PP, which is a very soft, a pianissimo. What they're telling you is they want you to press the left pedal, if you have one, right there, approximately somewhere during the next to the last measure. All right, it's after you played the notes there and you're waiting to play the notes in the last measure. Somewhere in there you push the soft pedal down so that when you play the last chord in the left hand, it's soft. It's really, really soft. So to do the last line, just the last line, it would be here. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, off. And then you lift both pedals and the hands all at the same time on beat 4 in the last measure. That's fine. My problem with it is people start using the left pedal, the soft pedal, for anything that's soft. And they start using it as a crutch. And my suggestion to you is don't use it unless you have to. And in this case, I normally would not use a soft pedal to get very, very soft. You learn in time how to make the notes really soft. And on a piano, on an acoustic piano, you make them soft 2 ways. One is push the keys down slowly, and it will be, the slower you go down, the softer they'll be. The problem is you can push it down so slowly they won't sound at all because the hammer won't trigger to hit the string. But a technique for that is instead of coming straight down, go at an angle. Because if you go at an angle, your overall down is slower because you're going this way, not just this way. So I tend to go in toward the fall board, and I tend to raise my wrist gently. And it takes practice. And it's different on different parts of the piano. And it's different on different pianos. So you have to experiment a little bit. But you'll find eventually, if you work on it, it's really not that hard, and it's a good technique to learn. Having said all that, let's try this Oasis out and see what happens. Very slowly, together. You play it one hand at a time with me for a while if you have to. So I'll give us 4 counts because it's in common time. So your left hand starts here, and your right hand's going to be here. And if you're going to use the pedals, put the feet on them. If you're going to use the soft pedal, put the foot on it right now. Have them on there. Don't be putting the feet on and taking them off the pedal while you're playing. If you need it, put it there and leave it there for the rest of the piece. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, ready, and go. And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Off.